got you. Come on.
You are Valak! The Defiler! The Profane! The Marquis of Snakes!
Hey guys, what's happening? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we'll be taking a look at Valak the Defiler, who's featured as the main antagonist of the recent 2018 horror film, The Nun. First appearing in The Conjuring 2 as the demon responsible for haunting the Hodgson family, we soon came to find out that the demon, which had disguised itself in the form of a nun, had garnered a particular hatred for Lorraine Warren, something we'll be discussing later in the video. Though it usually took the form of a nun, the demon was responsible for the Crooked Man, which was the presumed antagonist of The Conjuring 2 until the film's conclusion. Much of what we know about Valak can be attributed to the Lesser Key of Solomon, a 17th century text that identifies the key players of hell. For those of you who remember my video on Hereditary, it's basically where we get all the information about the Demon King Payman, who was the primary antagonist of the film, along with his disturbing cult. In the Lesser Key of Solomon, Valak is referred to as the Great President of Hell, who chose to look like a small winged child. We actually get a brief glimpse of this in The Nun, when Father Burke follows what appears to be a child into the cemetery next to the monastery.
And out of the ground formed every beast of the field and every bird of the sky. Valak.
Throughout the ages, Valak has often been pictured riding a two-headed dragon whilst commanding 30 legions of demons. The text has also attributed him with the power to locate, summon and control serpents, something we see the entity perform on numerous occasions in the film. While the demon was believed to be one of the most powerful servants of Satan, I thought it was also interesting that it was always keen to share strength and knowledge to devoted magical practitioners. And this is what I presume inspired the Duke to open the doorway to hell in the first place, as Valak had likely offered him knowledge and power beyond his natural scope. In the film Annabelle Creation, set between the 1940s and mid-60s, Sister Charlotte shows Mr. Mullins a picture of herself in Romania with 3 other nuns. Mr. Mullins then asks her who the nun in the background of the photograph was, and though we know it to be Valak, the sister simply tells him that she doesn't remember who that woman was. And in the post-credit scene, we then see Valak roaming the candlelit halls of the Carter Monastery in Romania. There's also an earlier scene in the film where Janice is led into the cottage by a nun before being possessed by Annabelle, and though we don't clearly see the nun's face, I'm almost certain this was also Valak and an example of the entity sharing its strength and knowledge to assist another. In the recent prequel, it's revealed that the Carter Monastery was built somewhere in Romania by a Duke hundreds of years prior. Having become obsessed with dark magic and Satanism, the Duke had attempted to summon Valak from the catacombs only to be killed by members of the Vatican, who then sealed the rift with the blood of Christ. While the pure blood of Christ was able to repel evil for hundreds of years, the bombing of the monastery during World War II released the entity onto the physical realm. Now released onto the monastery, but contained within its walls due to the continuous prayers of the nuns that attempted to hold evil at bay, Valak then took on the form of a nun, which helped the entity blend in, while simultaneously mocking their faith. Though the group continuously prayed to combat the evil, the demonic entity walked freely around the monastery at nights, killing and possessing the nuns when they were at their most vulnerable. Now down to only 2, the remaining nuns attempted to use an ancient key to recover an artifact containing the blood of Christ in a final attempt to defeat the evil, but after one of them was mercilessly slain, the remaining sister sacrificed her life to prevent Valak from claiming her as a host. Following this death and the discovery of the body by the neighborhood delivery boy Maurice, and unaware that all the nuns were actually dead, the Vatican sent Father Burke and Sister Irene, a woman who was training to become a nun, over to investigate whether the grounds were still holy.
Sister, we mustn't stop praying, even for a second. This convent has had perpetual adoration for centuries.
After Maurice, Irene, and Father Burke arrive at the monastery, Valak begins to manipulate them by creating mass illusions that showed the otherwise deceased nuns going about their duties. Now, Sister Irene speaks to a number of them that give her false advice, causing her to trust them. Maurice is chased away by the zombified corpse of one of the nuns, and Father Burke is also tormented by Valak, who takes the form of a young boy that died during an exorcism he had performed years ago. Eventually finding the artifact that contained the blood of Christ, the trio then confronted Valak in the catacombs and were able to use the divine blood to injure the demon and send it back to hell. However, in the film's conclusion, it's revealed that Maurice had actually been attacked by Valak in the form of one of his serpents which possessed him. This is also explained as being the same Maurice seen in the original Conjuring film during a lesson the Warrens were giving about demonic possession.
Action! Peggy! Come on!
I'm attacked!
guess you just want to move it. Yeah, and hold still like that, right? Let's go and plan on it, and we cut. That's what I plan to do. Off your look, I'm going to cut to the next shot.
Okay, great.
We'd hoped to discover if the killings had been motivated purely by anger, or if, as Ronnie DeFeo testified in court, he had been under the influence of something demonic.
When talking about the development of Valak, creator James Wan admitted that although he had a strong vision for The Conjuring 2, he was not 100% sure about how the demon would look, but was certain he did not want it to be a CGI monstrosity. After talking to Lorraine Warren, whose character was portrayed by the talented Vera Farmiga in the film series, she'd noted that she used to see a hooded spectral entity which would haunt her home, and after meditating on the concept, the director eventually settled on Valak's manifestation into a nun. The reason for this was that Lorraine and her husband relied on religion and its power to defeat demonic entities, and by taking the form of a nun, Valak was essentially subverting the sacred religious iconography and symbolism that grounded her character and made her feel safe. This idea is of course revisited with the nun, as Valak not only kills all the nuns in the monastery, but the entity also defiles the holy lands with its insidious intent, turning the once peaceful grounds of worship into a nightmare of its own design. While I was watching the film, I couldn't help but think that Sister Irene bore a striking resemblance to Lorraine Warren. They not only looked similar, but also seemed to have the same unexplained power of premonition. I was then shocked to discover that Sister Irene was actually played by Thaisa Farmiga, the younger sister of Vera who played Lorraine in the Conjuring films. Given all of this, and the fact that the series of films are contained within the same cinematic universe, I suspect that in the later installments we'll come to find out that Sister Irene and Lorraine Warren were actually related. I mean, we never get Irene's last name in The Nun, and her actions in the film, which were instrumental in the defeat of Valak, would explain why the demon harbored such a deep hatred for Lorraine and the Warrens. In The Conjuring 2, we also get a hint that this supernatural gift was unique to the Warrens, as Lorraine's daughter Judy also sees Valak in their home, reinforcing my theory that Sister Irene and Lorraine Warren are related, and that Valak's discovery of this is what causes him to target the Warren family. This of course is just my personal theory, and as always, I'm curious to hear what you guys think, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. Well, that's all for today, folks. Big thanks to all of you guys who requested we take a look at Valak as featured in the Conjuring series. Don't forget to hit subscribe and click the notification icon to stay up to date on all my content. And if there's anything else you'd like to request, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Niyat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
Honey? What's wrong?
Mom. Who's that?